Here's just a few things I want to say about situation going on with ICE. I felt like I had to contribute something. It's a lot going on. I mean, things that we've never really witnessed, in our lifetimes. Although I believe a lot of our forefathers and some of our parents have witnessed, similar things during the '60s, civil rights movement, and even times before that and after that. However, for a lot of us coming up, whether it's '70s, '80s, '90s, a lot of us haven't really seen a lot of what's going on. It's almost like Gestapo is in the streets, the Spanish Inquisition, is just running amok. However, what I would like to say to a lot of people is the reason why a lot of this is going on, and it seems like it's just going on and on and on and on, is primarily because the only people who really have the power to stop them, other than United States citizens, all of us, putting our votes together to vote, out certain people in Congress and vote in others who would do, things that we're asking them to do, is that it's really the job of law enforcement to oversee, right, the carrying out or the protection of United States citizens, right? So let's say you ever heard the term, no one is above the law? That's a very true statement. No one is above the law. So the question is, if someone comes into the neighborhood or into your neighborhood or into any neighborhood under the, authority of a badge or law enforcement, and they break the law, it's law enforcement who actually has the power to arrest, carry out, the law, right, and arrest anyone who's breaking the law. I think that we've gotten to a point in America where law enforcement, and primarily the blue line thing, it's become such a power unto itself that now we need law enforcement to show up and enforce the laws against people who are behind that blue wall, that blue line, right? And it's harder to do. They would rather just let law enforcement, federal law enforcement, carry out their duties, even if they're breaking the law. Now, there is some fine lines, like you can't arrest federal officers or federal agents if they're in the course of their duties, they're carrying on an investigation, things like that. But if they break the law, even while carrying on an investigation, it's a crime. And guess what? Police, regular city police, have the power to arrest them. And that's what's not happening. Police officers are either uneducated and don't know that they have the power to arrest them, or they're walking in a practice that they've been trained to walk in, which is, hey, this is my brother in arms or brother in law enforcement, or we're on this side of the blue line. So they're not trying to arrest them. And so they swore an oath to the Constitution, right, to protect your rights, right, against, whether it's a threat, foreign or domestic, whether it's, anyone who breaks the law, right? They have a right. They swore an oath to protect your rights, and they're not doing it. So the reason why this is going on is simple. It's just law enforcement not enforcing the law. The only thing law enforcement needs to do when they see someone, right, breaking the law, such as a federal agent, is to go and arrest them. They conduct an investigation first to see if there's been some sort of law that was broken. And if this law has been broken or an accusation has been made and you can substantiate it with video and the investigation shows that that's the case, then the only thing they need to do is arrest them. But they're not going to do it. And I couldn't tell you the reason why, because it's a lawful arrest for anyone who breaks the law. The person, the federal agent can go to federal court once the matter is moved to federal court, and they can claim immunity as a federal agent. But they'll do that as the process goes on. But at that moment, if they break the law, they can be arrested. It's not a crime to walk up to anyone and ask them, hey, what's your name or whatever, right? It's a consensual encounter if you would engage in conversation with them, but a U.S. citizen does not have to answer that question, right? And a U.S. citizen doesn't have to say a thing, right? Whether U.S. citizen or non-U.S. citizen, someone walk up to you and ask you a question, you don't have to say a thing, and it all depends on, what level or stage you're at in the citizenship process, right? Because you have a right to produce certain IDs, produce certain identification if it's requested of you, if you're in the process or ongoing process of obtaining citizenship and things of that nature. And it may vary, but the whole point is U.S. citizens do not have to answer any questions. Hey, are you a U.S. citizen? No, you don't have to say a thing. You don't have to say a thing. There's no crime committed, no laws broken, right? And unless they have reasonable articulable suspicion that you committed a crime, right, or that you're going to commit a crime or you're about to commit a crime, then, it's nothing to say. They have to come up to you and say, hey, I believe that you are suspected of committing this particular crime, breaking into this car, going over here and walking, breaking, it has to be articulated. If you just walk up and say, I'm arrested, stopping you for suspicion of a crime. What crime? You have to be articulated, you just can't make things up out of thin air. So that's my take on it. I believe that the only reason why this is going on is because law enforcement, over the decades and hundreds of years have created this, barrier, against, enforcing the law against their own, and they don't arrest their own. And own means, if you're on the side of law enforcement. However, when you see a crime being committed, it's their duty, they're taking an oath to arrest, anyone who breaks the law. That would include a federal agent. Even in the course of their duties, if they're breaking the law, no one's above the law. You broke the law should be enforced. A crime is committed, that person should be arrested. There's no special, treatment, anything like that. The investigation should be conducted. Then that person should be arrested and processed through the system the same way anyone else should be processed through the system. So this is why they're kicking down doors without warrants, using these administrative warrants, which is not even, a real warrant signed by an official, judge. They're using these things to kick down people's door, it's just being allowed. You don't see law enforcement, the city police anywhere on scene stopping them. They're just allowing it to go on, just total breaking of the laws. And it starts from the head down. There's no police chief in that particular city or police captain or commander or whatever telling the officers, if you see these guys breaking the law, you have to arrest them. The only time I've even heard of that being mentioned was with Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, where him, he made it clear, you come to the city and you break these laws, we're going to arrest you. If you break any laws. And it's the same thing with the sheriff, the head sheriff or commander or police chief in that city, who just recently said the same thing. So that's what the problem is. The problem is that the police that we see arresting us daily, for crimes that we commit, and they even have to follow the law and obtain warrants and different things. They're allowing someone else to break the law by not obtaining warrants, by grabbing people for no reason, right? Just grabbing them, seizing them. That's against the law. It's against the Constitution. You just seize someone. It's an unlawful seizure to grab someone and seize them in their person without having a warrant, without having a crime committed, nothing. So that's what the issue is. And in order for us to fix this problem, we need to speak to the mayors, the governors of our city, and we need to tell them, you guys need to have the police officers do their jobs and do their duties. The same way you have them do it every day against United States citizens, you need to have them do it against people who are breaking the law in uniform. Whether it's uniform or not uniform, they need to enforce the law. You can't have a double standard. If the law is broken, then that person who breaks the law needs to be arrested. That's the way it works. And so that's just my take on it as to why this is an ongoing thing. I don't really think it's necessarily a fear of, the police against the the federal agents, I think it's just a choice, because any commander, any mayor, any governor can tell them what the law is. Your law is broken, you arrest the person who breaks the law. You can't have, their job is to protect the United States citizens, right? And the governor protects the citizens within his state and those who travel and traverse through his state. It's the same thing with the mayor. It's the same thing with those who are appointed positions of authority. You have to protect these people. These people are not protected driving through your state or living in your state by some Gestapo, or some, just, I don't know what you call them, just breaking the law. These people who walking with supposedly under the color of law, breaking the law, then, you have zero protections, and you're paying taxes and you're paying these people salaries and they're watching you be assaulted and they're making these news conferences, but no one's saying anything when you could just simply issued an order to your head of police and chief of police and sheriffs and different things to arrest any agent who you see break the law. It's that simple. It'll end up in court, right? And it'll have to be litigated in court. They would exercise their immunity. Your state's attorneys will come and city attorneys will come and they would, lay down their claim and it'll go back and forth that way. But at least it'll put a stop to it when they know that there is a jurisdiction that has authority, to stop them from breaking the law, and it's clear that that's what they're doing, They can say, hey, we're conducting federal investigation or federal operation. Yeah, but you have to do it lawfully. You can't just undo it unlawfully. And so, again, that's my take on it. I'm not going to belabor it. I've said what I had to say, and that's where it is. So if we as the people, we need to reach out, speak to the governors, call them, bombard their phones, the chief of police and the mayors, really the governor and the mayors, and tell your officers to arrest any federal agent who is breaking the law. It's just that simple. If they're breaking the law, they're no different from anyone else. They should be, and guess what? This is not new. Police have arrested federal agents many times who have broken the law. Many times, whether it's DUI, whether it's rape or whatever, they've arrested many federal agents who've broken the law. Conducted their investigation, go and arrest them. That's how it has happened. So this is nothing new. It's just on a wide scale. We see dozens and dozens of federal agents. Hey, the police, they're here to police the city and the communities. You see someone breaking the law, I don't care who it is, you're supposed to arrest them. And that's just the bottom line. Bottom line, no more need to be said about that. And when it comes to people in Congress, they know this too. And they should be the ones pressing the governors and the mayors and the representatives, stress these things. But these are the people you have to vote out of office, because it shouldn't take for us to tell these people how to do their jobs. They're supposed to know these things. The citizens should be attracted. They act like they can't do anything. Sure you can. You can go to the governors, go to the mayors. What are you going to do? Why should we vote you back in office as a congressperson if you're at a loss as to what to say? It's like you don't even know what to say or what to tell us to remedy the situation or do your job. We don't need no special committees and all this other stuff. You can do that too, but right away you should be telling them, hey, governors, mayors, these guys are breaking the law. Look at the video, identify these persons and arrest them. It's that simple. And thank you for your time.